The year was 1864, deep in the throes of the American Civil War. The Union and Confederate forces had been locked in a brutal struggle for 3 years, and the country was soaked in the blood of its own people. In the heart of Tennessee stood Fort Liberty, a small but strategic stronghold held by a band of Union soldiers under the command of Captain Jonathan Hargrove. Fort Liberty was not a grand fortress. It was a collection of wooden barricades and trenches, a temporary bastion meant to control the nearby railway line, which was crucial for the supply chains of both armies. The Confederates, desperate to disrupt Union logistics, had set their sights on the fort. Captain Hargrove knew the enemy was coming. Reports from scouts warned of an advancing Confederate force, outnumbering them 3-1. The Union soldiers, numbering only 200, were battle-weary but determined. Among them was Corporal Samuel Reeves, a young sharpshooter from Pennsylvania, and Sergeant Marcus Bell, a hardened veteran who had fought since the war's beginning. As the sun set on September 16th, the sound of distant drums echoed through the hills. The Confederates were preparing for battle. Captain Hargrove gathered his men inside the fort. "We stand for something greater than ourselves," he told them. "This fort is our line. If we fall, the railway falls, and with it, the hopes of thousands of our brothers fighting further south." That night, under the cover of darkness, Confederate scouts attempted to breach the fort's defenses. The Union sentries spotted movement near the western wall, and shots rang out. The first skirmish had begun. The soldiers fought fiercely, repelling the scouts and maintaining their position, but they knew this was only a prelude to the main assault. At dawn, the Confederate Army launched a full-scale attack. Cannon fire shattered the morning silence, and musket balls whizzed through the air. The wooden walls of Fort Liberty splintered under the bombardment. Captain Hargrove directed his men to hold their positions. Sharpshooters like Corporal Reeves picked off advancing soldiers, while Sergeant Bell led the charge to reinforce the front lines. For hours, the battle raged. The Union soldiers fought with relentless determination, using every bullet, every inch of cover, and every ounce of strength to hold back the overwhelming enemy. Smoke and fire consumed the battlefield. Men fell, cries of agony mixing with the thunder of gunfire. By midday, the situation grew dire. The Confederates breached the southern barricade. Hand-to-hand combat ensued, with bayonets and rifle butts used in desperate struggle. Captain Hargrove, bloodied but unyielding, led a counterattack, driving the enemy back temporarily. Reinforcements were not coming. The Union Army was stretched thin, and Fort Liberty was left to its fate. Hargrove knew their chances of survival were slim, but surrender was not an option. Then, in the late afternoon, a miracle happened. A distant bugle call pierced the chaos. A Union cavalry force was approaching from the north. The Confederate commander, realizing his troops were now in danger of being surrounded, ordered a retreat. The battered defenders of Fort Liberty let out exhausted cheers as their enemies pulled back. The fort had held. Though victory came at a terrible cost, more than half of the Union soldiers lay dead or wounded. Fort Liberty remained in Union hands. The railway line stayed operational, allowing crucial supplies to reach General Sherman's forces advancing through Georgia. Captain Hargrove, barely able to stand, surveyed the battlefield. He knew history would forget the names of most who had fought there, but their sacrifice had tipped the scales, if only slightly, in favor of the Union. As night fell, the remaining soldiers gathered to bury their fallen comrades. They had fought not just for a fort, but for a cause greater than themselves. And though war would rage on for another year, the last stand at Fort Liberty became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable spirit of those who fought to keep their nation whole.